What's that in the sky? It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Talk Geekly.
Holy Hank Pym, you are the father. How's it going, geeks and geekettes? I am Pendragon here, the resident Kryptonian, and of course, high above Wayne Manor. As always, he is my friend and yours. He's the Gotham Knight, my good friend Cody. How you doing?
Hey, not too bad, Tom. I'm excited for another brand new Talk Geekly, fresh out the oven. We are, of course, bringing the latest and the greatest from comic books to video games and so much more from the geek culture. And first and foremost, Tom, what are you up to? How is that video game coming along?
Oh, man. Today I spent quite a bit of time bashing my head on my computer desk as I tried to understand how scene management works. As much fun as I'm having with this video game, I got to admit I'm probably having more frustrations than I've ever had ever. But it's okay. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep on doing what I do. And that game will come out very soon. Very soon might mean 2 years. But how's it going for you? Like, what have you been up to?
Not a whole lot. Really just kind of refining everything and just having a blast, kind of just diving into a lot more of the good old Viking Sims, just building this crazy city and really just kind of, I guess, learn more with Adobe Premiere. But outside of that, I got some really heavy hitting news. So I don't know about you, Tom, but
hey, I am so stoked that you're having fun with Valheim, but let's be real for a moment. If you are trying to play a survival game, one where you build everything that you need to stay alive, you need to be playing Minecraft, my dude. Like, seriously, Valheim is beautiful, but it does not touch what Minecraft can do, especially when it comes to messing with mods and all the different community created stuff that's out there.
yeah, I mean, I'll definitely have to check it out with this game still being pretty much beta. I think it's phenomenal for the price. But with that being said, guys, let's get ready to dive into some geekly news.
This week in Geek.
Holy crap, what a week we have had. I feel like the last couple of months have just been all about geek culture and Hollywood and the video game industry really pushing hard on all cylinders to try to give us as much as they can. And one of the biggest pieces of news is, I don't even know if that makes sense, but one of the biggest pieces of news for me has been the fact that we are getting a new Stone Cold Steve Austin book. Yeah, I know, the wrestler. That's right. Austin 316, that guy. Dun-dun. Yeah. But he is actually having a book that is dropping March 16th, 316 day, baby. It is called Stone Cold Steve Austin 316 Facts. 316 Facts. And this is freaking cool. Myself, I'm a huge fan of Austin, a huge fan of wrestling, period. And just having this piece of news drop was really cool for me. I love the fact that he actually talks about why fans continue to this day, almost 20 years later, to do the what chants. He goes on to talk about driving on a Zamboni and all the different things, including his relationship with Mr. McMahon. If you don't know Austin, if you don't know Stone Cold, now's the time. Pick up the book. I'm sure it's going to actually put you on the right path. And hey, who knows? You might actually become a wrestling fan.
Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of people might not know this, but I was a huge wrestling fan growing up, like just outrageously huge. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the guy who got me into it. I remember wearing the Rattlesnake Arm t-shirt as a kid. I remember buying the VHS tapes with all his wrestling matches on it. That's how old I am. VHS tape, baby. And I remember watching everything right up until I forgot what it was. It was right when something with Vince and his arc or something. I forgot. It was long time ago. But man, oh man, I'm gonna have to pick this up too because he was one of my all-time favorites. And the way he just took, the WWF and just molded it and shaped it it's unspeakable. It's phenomenal.
No, certainly. It was a different time, and that definitely set things up as far as where wrestling kind of took a turn when we were seeing more of the bad guy become the good guy, and Austin was certainly at the forefront of that.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, just even what 20 years after the fact, people are still in love with this man. It just speaks volumes about just the presence he had. The presence, speaking of which, for me, it's going to be mind-blowing. It looks like not only did we get a new title for Spider-Man No Way Home, Tom Holland has also revealed that this is maybe his last film. This is kind of something big. He doesn't know what's going on and doesn't know if the future is going to be continued after this. And I know a lot of people want to say yes, but there is some stuff going into it. There is some speculation that we're going to see Miles Morales come out of this and be the head Spider-Man in the MCU. And in this interview, he was also asked whether or not Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were involved with No Way Home. And he says, I knew you were going to ask me that. No, they are not on set. Neither of them are in this film, but I am being asked that question a lot. If you see a red dot on my head, it's a Sony or Marvel sniper about to blow my head off. So you do the math on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as fans, we're kind of used to all the leaks that he has kind of dropped on us. So that statement from him is kind of, it's almost like I want to take that as a joke and just say, oh, maybe they are in the film. And that's his way of like giving it to the fans and saying, yeah, they're in there, but I got to act like I don't know what's going on because they might take me out. But I think what's really interesting is the fact that he's saying this is his last film. Is this his last Sony film? Is he perhaps signing on with Marvel to do exclusive work with only them? It's really rough because I actually like the dude as Spider-Man. I don't know how you feel, but like, do you want to see him just drop out of the character?
No. I would say he's probably my favorite Spider-Man. I love Tobey Maguire, don't get me wrong, but I grew up with Tobey Maguire. I would say Tom like absolutely murders it. And it would be a shame for the MCU to lose him.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree. But we'll just have to wait and hope for the best for the next Spider-Man film. But speaking of hoping for the best, that's basically how I felt a couple of years ago when EA announced that we would be getting a new Need for Speed. Well, it turns out that they're actually taking the team behind Need for Speed and making them focus on a completely different franchise, and that, of course, is the new Battlefield. Now, EA did say that both of these video games will be coming on the next-gen consoles. However, they want EA DICE to focus right now on the Battlefield series. For me, it kind of breaks my heart. I gotta be honest with you. I love Need for Speed. Always have since the early days of the first PlayStation. Need for Speed has been one of the few racing games that I have enjoyed, and I would love to see the next one, especially on the next gen consoles. But it kind of sucks that they're going to be focusing on Battlefield in the meantime.
So I'm with you. I love Need for Speed, don't get me wrong. But I think with the amount of attention focused on Battlefield 6 and what they promised to deliver, I think they need to put all hands on deck. And I think with as many flops that have been happening recently, we need to see something actually come through and follow through with their promise.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the last Battlefield was probably one of the best first-person shooters released on console. So I don't necessarily believe that they need to put all their eggs in that basket. I think that the racing genre is one that has been neglected for a very, very long time. And yeah,
dang, someone must not play a lot of Forza.
Well, Forza, that's one game. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. Thank you. I'm glad you brought up Forza. It's like you have Gran Turismo, you have Forza, and that's it. And Forza has been killing it. Gran Turismo can't touch Forza. So give me Need for Speed, something that will compete with Forza.
And while we're on the subject of shortages, that leads me to our next subject. It looks like the PS5 and Xbox Series X component shortage is actually going to be investigated by the U.S. government. So this has actually been caught by President Biden himself, and he made a report that he's going to be actually taking the helm and getting some changes. He pledged a 100-day review of supply changes, as well as $37 billion dollars to fund legislation that will accelerate manufacturing for these chips used in the PS5 and Xbox Series X, as well as some GPUs as well. So I think that's pretty cool. I never would have guessed that to happen out of the COVID-19 pandemic, but I guess there's I guess something new happens every day.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't help but believe that this is just pandering to the audience. This is a whole bunch of malarkey. Let's be realistic. Since the entire pandemic, when it came to the PS5, to the Xbox, the new consoles, to even the 30 series from NVIDIA, it's an artificial creation. Like, this is all, you have a system where people are not spending the money because of the pandemic. So these companies are creating a false sense of supply and demand. If this is legit and they actually do investigate, I really, really hope that they find a freaking warehouse somewhere out there in Arizona full of all of these consoles, full of all of these chipsets. Like, legit. But I do digress, because otherwise we'd have an entirely different podcast where I just rant and rave about government conspiracies. So moving on, for me, the biggest bit of news this week, kind of tying into something we talked about last week, of course, that was as far as the casting of Supergirl, is the fact that Warner Brothers is officially looking to supposedly reboot the Superman franchise. Now, I say supposedly reboot because we don't know for sure if that's what they're going to do, but we do know that J.J. Abrams is going to be producing, well, maybe Bad Robot, the company that J.J. Abrams owns, will be producing the next Superman film along with Coates. I'm gonna just say his last name because he's got a crazy first name that I'm just gonna massacre. So we'll just ignore that for now. But a lot of fans, once they found out about the writer for this film, kind of took to the internet and were not happy because it kind of feels like this might lead to a more African-American centric Superman. And I, for one, who have been a Superman fan for a very, very long time, am super stoked about this. Because we could see a Earth 23 Superman. We might get Calvin Ellis. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, and I think I've seen what you were talking about, how people were just up in arms over it, and that it makes me laugh because there's been black Supermen. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like why are they acting so full? I mean, tell me you're racist in less words, please.
Exactly.
But on to better news other than just people being scum. We did get a drop of some new Final Fantasy VII Remake from the Sony State of Play. It looks like we're going to get some DLC, and this is going to star none other than Yuffie. I think I said her name right. I know it's either Yuffie or Yuffie.
Yuffie.
We're going to say Yuffie. This shows the young ninja arriving in Midgard right when Cloud fell into the church. So this gives us just a little tidbit. I guess she's here to steal the ultimate materia from Shinra and ends up helping Avalanche, but not the one associated with Barrett, Tifa, and Cloud. So this just gives us a little bit of a kind of just some ideas what to expect. I did notice a brand new photo mode with the PS5 edition, that's okay. It looks like every game's kind of introducing a photo mode now, so nothing to go too crazy about. But I mean, it's kind of cool they just finally added one. If anything, I'm excited to kind of get a continuation of the game itself and not to see it be another disc form, but this time something probably a little bit cheaper.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously you chose this for your piece of news as far as State of Play is concerned. Was there anything else that really stuck out stuck out for you? Because honestly, for me, it was the new Oddworld game being free.
That looked
like
amazing.
it being free for PSN subscribers.
Yep.
What else kind of popped out for you?
Solar Ash looked pretty good. Just the art and the graphics of the game just looked beautiful and phenomenal. I am pretty interested in that one for sure.
All right, awesome. Well, that was the news for the week, but of course, you don't come here for just the news. You come here for some of those hot comic books that are coming out this week.
So, my first comic is a little bit different. We do Future State Superman versus Imperious Lex #2. So, this is a little bit different for me. I'm kind of jumping into it. So we see Superman and Lois Lane floating in space near Lexer, which is it's this whole entire planet that Lex Luthor has taken over. But not in, I guess, in a horrible way. Like he was either elected as a public official or some sort. So I didn't read the first issue. But Lois is getting ready to conduct some business, go down there and kind of see what's going on. But Superman's told to stay behind. There's a red sun nearby, and it's going to cause some trouble because he can only last 3 minutes in the red sun. So Lois Lane just laughs and says, I can confirm that. That made me chuckle a little bit. I never really read a whole lot of Superman, but seeing Lois Lane counter with that was just hilarious. So she's kind of second guessing herself down there. And then we see Lex throwing her this huge welcoming party. But she's still a little bit suspect of everything. So it's kind of cool. We see her sit down and going through different finances and just seeing everything's in ruins, which Lex Luthor, pretty much laughs and he says, these are your problems too. Because I guess his planet is in some sort of united, think of you like the United Nations, but it's like the United Planets. I forgot exactly what it was called.
The United Federation of Planets.
Yes. And it was kind of funny because at that moment, one of her surveying team members come in saying they found this crystal. It's like deuterium or something like that. That will solve the energy crisis for years to come, which makes Lex Luthor the richest man in the galaxy. And then we see Lois Lane counteract saying, no, actually, we all are because your shares are part of that, United Planet Federation, which gets Lex just backtracking. And it was kind of cool. We got to see him turn the population against everyone, and it gets nuts because Superman gets involved and they go to war. And I'm just going to leave you guys with that little tidbit. Now, this was written by Mark Russell with art being done by Stephen Pugh.
I'm digging hearing what you're talking about just because one of the books I read this week doesn't necessarily tie into his beef with Lex, but just hearing you talk about the United Federation of Planets, I got a little bit of that. I got a little bit of that in one of the books I read. So now I'm kind of interested as to how they tie into each other. So just kind of hearing you read about this, how do you feel the relationship between obviously Superman and Lex Luthor? How do you feel that might end up? Where do you think that's going to end up going in this arc specifically?
Well, I think they are pretty much like at each other's throats in hatred at the end. Without spoiling too much, but I think Lex has something up his sleeve for what Superman did.
Okay, well, I guess I either have to read it myself or just wait till you talk about it a little bit more. But one of the books I read this week is New Mutants issue number 16. This is written by Vita Ayala with art from Rod Reese. Now, within the new world for Marvel Mutants, of course, they kind of live on an island where they don't have to worry about humans persecuting them. And one of the things that the New Mutants specifically are kind of in charge of is just making sure that the younger generation of mutants learn to not just control their mutant abilities, but also how to work together and chain those abilities to create even more powerful abilities, and something that I've talked about in the past. Now, this issue does have multiple stories. They're all, of course, going on at the same time, but I think one of the most important stories in this book is, of course, the story that involves the Shadow King. Now, he's one of those mutants that you just cannot trust. And you see that. It's very obvious in this book. Him kind of influencing the young mutants and getting them to trust him is very, very bad. But a really cool scene where we see him combine all of their powers in somewhat of a good way where they're able to experience things that they would not have otherwise. But honestly, it does have some rather deadly side effects. Now, the Shadow King, he's one of those characters that have been around for a very, very long time. And I got to be honest, I'm excited to see where they go with him as far as, of course, the New Mutants is concerned. But one of the really cool things in this is the character, and I can't even think of her name right now. It sucks that I can't, but we have another Wolverine clone. This one is actually really, really young, probably about 13, 14 years old. Just a young little kid who is a clone of the female Wolverine, and I kind of like where that character is headed. I just can't wait for the next issue.
So, are you talking about Weapon 23?
Well, Weapon 23 is this character is a clone of Weapon 23.
Yeah. So, does she look similar to her? How does she look as a character?
She's a little girl. She's a little girl. I mean, she's like 12, 13. Like, she's just a little girl. And, she's got the healing factor. She's got the same claws as far as Weapon 23 is concerned.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah. She's got the similar, 2 claws in the hand, the foot claws and stuff like that, similar to Dakin. But it's just, I think that character's just kind of fun and fresh and new.
Yeah, no, hey, that's sometimes all you need in a comic is a nice little fresh look at, a new face and new potential within it. Do you think this is going to be a heavy hitter in the next upcoming issue?
I think the things involving the Shadow King are going to be very important moving forward with everything we have going as far as mutants are concerned in Marvel.
I got you. Well, that kind of leads me to something that's proving to lead to something really important in DC Future State Batman Superman issue number 2. Now, I'm pretty sure I covered the first one. If not, this was in one of the Superman issues I read. This starts at the beginning of the Magistrate occupation, and we see Batman confronting Mr. Toad. Now, Mr. Toad's the one who stabs Superman with like that kryptonite dagger and has him subdued and bound. And it's crazy. I was kind of curious what they were doing and what they were planning, but it gets revealed a little bit later. We see Batman go up against a hybrid wild boar, and a pressure grenade, which is meant to kill a human, does absolutely nothing to this hybrid. So after barely escaping, we see him call the Bat Cycle to chase after Mr. Toad. Excuse me. But then we are introduced to Professor Pig, and I don't know if that's one of Superman's like arch nemesis from the past, but this guy comes packed and ready for action. He has a kryptonite like scalpel ready to dig into Superman. He admits that he's found of the false face serum, but he misses his old techniques. It looks like he's about to carve Superman up. And then, of course, he's saved by the luck of the draw. He was able to break out of his bounds, and then things just get insane. This Professor Pig has taken the DNA of Superman and imbued himself with it. He's I think it's like the strength of the 10 boars combined. And so Batman just pretty much like, let's switch sides. Like, I'm good on fighting this guy. And Batman goes up against this huge like Superman. I don't even know how to explain it. Think of like a Doomsday looking esque type of super. I don't even know how to explain it. It looks gruesome and brutal. And we see all these pigeons, all these rats. They all have Superman's laser eyes in them. So, I mean, you guys can kind of just think of what that's going to lead to. The Magistrate is getting smart. They're allowing this to happen so they can take over Gotham. And Batman at the end of this issue actually kicks out Superman, tells him just get out of his city. Now, this was written by Jean Lu Yang with art being done by Stephanie Segvio.
All right. Now, Professor Pig, of course, was actually a Batman villain. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see Professor Pig coming back in some of the more recent stories within the DC arc. Do you feel like we might see more of Professor Pig, or is this something that is just going to be maybe 2 or 3 issues and then they'll bury him once again?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. I've read a lot of DC in the last 3 years, and I have not heard very much about him. So maybe they're just doing that thing where they kind of bring out someone, from a past, arc or two and just give them a little bit of a spotlight and then, take it away. But who's to say?
Well, yeah, especially with the, Future State series and everything coming up very, very soon from DC Comics as far as where they go beyond Future State. Now, my next book this week, honestly, probably should be the last book I talk about, but I got one very, very special book to talk about at the end. But this week, I do want to talk about X-Men issue number 18. Jonathan Hickman is the writer. We've got amazing art from Mahmoud Asrar, or Asrar, however you want to pronounce it. I'm so sorry if I massacred that. But of course, you all know how much of a fan I am of Mutants, and this book does not let off the gas. So the X-Men are investigating the Vault. I've never heard of this place. This is one of those moments where Marvel kind of loses me as far as continuity is concerned, but I do understand why. Currently, we have the King in Black happening. So some of the books don't necessarily tie into that. So you have to kind of bounce around and read King in Black and then go back to these other books and understand that these are happening after the King in Black is done. So with that being said, of course, they're investigating the Vault, and it's a hidden city with an unknown population. And we've got a team made up of Darwin, Wolverine, now that's Laura, X-23, and Synch. Now, the secrets of the Vault are very, very interesting because these people that live here, they're called the Children. They have powers similar to mutant powers. And we kind of see this situation where the X-Men are face to face with these characters, and it's not looking really good for the X-Men. But then all of a sudden, you can tell that these children are just not ready to deal with people at the level of what the X-Men are. The X-Men are ready for battle. They are trained, they are seasoned, and they handle their shit. And they just decimate the children. And one cool moment is when Synch is actually able to take abilities from one of the children, and that's something that originally was never thought possible because his power, he's only able to take abilities from other mutants. And the protocols, the laws set in place by Xavier where you can't kill humans don't apply in this case because technically the children are not human. So I'm not really sure where we're headed with the X-Men book right now, but I do always give Jonathan Hickman the benefit of the doubt, and I did have a lot of fun with this book, so I definitely cannot wait for the next issue to see exactly how the children play into not just the Marvel mutant story, but the Marvel story as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like there's, some crazy stuff brewing up. What do you think the focus on X-23 is this week? It seems, that's 2 of your books where we kind of had her involved. Is there anything special going on with her character?
Well, I want to make it very, very clear. The New Mutants has nothing to do with X-23. It's a clone of her that's a lot younger.
Well, yeah. It seemed there was, some focus on her this week. That's all.
Well, the other character has been in a lot of books over the last couple of months. I don't necessarily talk about them on the show, but I think that Wolverine is kind of doing his own thing in his book and some of the X-Force books. So we actually see a lot more of Laura and Scout. That is her name. Scout is her name. The other clone of Wolverine, Scout. We see a lot more of Laura and Scout in some of the other Marvel books. And I think that's just Marvel knowing that Wolverine doesn't need to show up in an X book. Let's keep him in his own series, and let's use some of those other characters in some of our less popular series.
Okay, yeah, I gotcha. And it's always nice to kind of pop the spotlight on them and get them a little bit of, some eyes on it. And who's to say, Scout could become something that is, just leaving people in shock and awe, with her character development.
I think it's possible.
Speaking of character development, that leads me to DC Future State Dark Detective issue 4. And this one starts off with a bang. We have Hannah at the magistrate headquarters getting interrupted by her dad saying Jeff, a.k.a. Batman, he's up on the roof and he's doing something that's not supposed to be done. Hannah is quick to, jump the gun and head there. Upon arrival, she sees that Bruce is kind of just lurking in the shadows, and then he quickly subdues her and gets her out of there. Bruce knows that the magistrate's going to be coming and they're just going to blow that house up. So he just pretty much just saved Noah and Hannah. He then pretty much bounds them and gets them to a safe house. And this is the point of no return. Bruce can at least save them, but there's no turning back after this. And it's kind of crazy to see what happens. We see Bruce and Peacekeeper number 1 go head to head in just a brutal fist beatdown. Peacekeeper number 1 saying he's going to kill him again and make sure he stays dead. Bruce, of course, counteracting with some clever banter here and there and just fist and blows left and right until everything blows up. It was a shocking turn of events, to say the least. We then get a little bit of a snippet of a Red Hood, as he is a wanted man on the run now from his last escapade. So things are getting heated up for both parties involved. Now, this has 2 different writers and artists in it because it was 2 different stories. This was both in retrospect order. Joshua Williamson and Mariko Tamaki, with art being done by, and this is going to be a horrible mispronunciation, so sorry about this, Genius Milanius and Dan Morrow.
So where do you think Dark Detective is headed? Do you think that we are going to see a much bigger tie-in as far as the other Batman is concerned, or is this just going to stay kind of separate from that?
So they've already crossed paths a couple times. I think we're going to see the mantle get handed back to Bruce, but I think we need to see an event go down first. I'm just not exactly sure what that event's going to be.
All right, I get you. Well, my last book this week, I'm still in love with a lot of the future state things that are going on, and I might be the Marvel guy, but I'm always going to be the Superman guy. So I could not stay away from Future State Superman House of L, written by Philip Johnson, with some of the most, honestly, I will admit, this is some of the best art that I've seen this week from Scott Godlowski. We see the flag of the House of L on fire, and just a multitude of Supermen all fighting what looks to be parademons. And, it's just a beautiful action scene. And we end up transitioning to the Fortress of Sanctuary, which is actually on the moon. And these Supermen are all kind of like retreating to assess their loss. We don't know what's going on. We're kind of thrown into this book. Now, of course, with Future State, you've got things happening in all different kind of periods of time. This book obviously taking place quite a bit in the future. We've got characters who are related to Kal-El, but generations down the line. And we hear about an armada that's on its way, and it's led by someone known as the Red King. Now, this armada is made up of the armies of Apocalypse, the New Gods, and all of the planets that the Red King has conquered. This book is so good. Not just myself being biased and being a Superman fan, but just like leaving you on the edge of your seat and not knowing how the heroes are going to overcome what they are dealing with. I think the writer just does a really good job of keeping you tied in and kind of just waiting, and you're prepared to just, anything could happen. And Brainiac number 4, he says there's hope. And as he says that, we see him cut down by the Black Racer, a character that we've actually seen in some of the other Superman books happening at the current time. I don't want to spoil too much, but I will say this. The Red King, I thought he was Superman the whole time. No, he's not. He's not Superman. He's not the actual Kal-El. He's not Clark Kent. But we do get to see Clark Kent face to face against the Red King. and it doesn't necessarily end the way you think it does. House of L is freaking fire. I cannot wait for issue number 2, and this is probably one of the best DC books out there right now, next to Death Metal and all of the Metal series, period, in my opinion.
Hey, well, it's always awesome to hear you give praise to DC. I know you're so famous for constantly shitting on them for their continuity issue, so it's nice to hear you give it some praise. Are you going to be reading the next issue after this?
Yeah, hands down. When I read this, I was so in love. Like, seriously, this is some of the best DC shit I've seen in a long time.
Hey, well, that's great. I'm definitely, I have that book, so I'm gonna have to give it a read after this podcast.
Yeah, you need to, for real. It's really, really good.
But with that being said, guys, that does wrap up this week's books. But as always, what are you up to this week, Tom? How's game development going? Is that going to be pretty much what you're going to be doing after this?
Yeah, pretty much. Right after this, I'm going to be jumping back onto the level manager and trying to figure out how we can transition from level to level. This week is all about focusing on the Dead Woods, which is the second level in our game. And once we've got that done, we pretty much have a basic demo set in place. And I will be dropping that very, very soon on the Facebook for our PC listeners to be able to play if they want to give it a shot. But what about you? What's the next big thing for my man Cody?
So I'm just kind of playing my backlog. I started DMC 5 on the PS5 to see what that feels like and plays like. Outside of that, just catching up on some editing. We're going to learn how to do some time-lapsing videos here shortly. Just content creation on Overboard pretty much.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. Well, I am super excited to see what the next week has in store as far as not just comic book news and video game news, but of course those new comic books, because that's just kind of the lifeblood of the show.
With that being said, guys, that does wrap up this week's podcast. As always, you can catch us on our collective social media platforms at Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and so much more at Talk Geekly. And Tom, why don't you send us off?
As always, keep it geekly.